For 75 years, one military alliance has pretty much defined global security. It was a promise, really, made in the rubble of one world war to prevent another. That alliance is NATO, and today we're going to break down why it's more critical right now than maybe ever before.
Think about it. It was born from the ashes of World War II, specifically designed to stop a World War III that thankfully never actually came. And yet, here we are, decades later, and NATO is all over the headlines. It's more relevant than it's been in years. So why is that? That's the big question we're going to dig into.
Okay, so to really get NATO, you have to go back, way back, to the beginning. You have to understand the problem it was built to solve. And that problem really was fear. Just pure, simple post-war fear. I mean, just imagine the scene. It's 1945. The war is finally over, but Europe is just flattened. It's in ruins. And then, almost immediately, a new threat starts to creep in. In 1948, you have a Soviet-backed coup that topples the government in Czechoslovakia. The very same year, the Soviets try to starve West Berlin with a blockade. A new dividing line, the Iron Curtain as they called it, was falling across the entire continent.
So you've got these countries in Western Europe, and they're economically and militarily just shattered. They look to the east, and what do they see? They see the massive Soviet army. And they see a political ideology that feels like a total threat to their new democracies. They absolutely knew they couldn't stand alone against that.
So, out of this climate of intense anxiety, this really radical idea was born. A brand new kind of promise.
This right here is Article 5 of the North Atlantic Treaty, signed back in 1949, and it is the absolute beating heart of NATO. The promise is simple, but it is powerful. An attack on one of us is an attack on all of us. An attack on, say, Luxembourg is an attack on the United States. That's a huge deal.
And this whole idea, it has a name, collective defense. This wasn't just another typical alliance. No, this was a security guarantee that basically tethered the military power of the United States and Canada directly to the defense of Western Europe. It was designed to make any potential attacker think twice.
And for the next 4 decades, this promise of protection created this incredibly tense, but surprisingly stable standoff that we all now know as the Cold War.
And just like that, Europe was split in two. On one side, you had NATO, this voluntary group of Western democracies, and in response, the Soviets created their own version, the Warsaw Pact, in 1955. This locked all the nations of Eastern Europe into their military bloc. For decades, these two massive forces, armed to the teeth, just stared each other down across that line.
And you know what? It worked. For all the tension, all the proxy wars, and the scary close calls, NATO did exactly what it set out to do. It prevented a direct invasion of Western Europe. The standoff held, and that devastating war that everyone was so terrified of, it never happened.
But then, everything changed. 1989, the Berlin Wall comes down. 1991, the Soviet Union itself dissolves. NATO's whole reason for existing, its main adversary, was just gone. So what now? Does the alliance just pack up its bags and go home? Well, not exactly.
Nope. Instead of just dissolving, NATO reinvented itself. It went from being this static, defensive wall to a much more proactive security organization. And this was a massive shift. The alliance found new missions, from peacekeeping in the Balkans to stop ethnic cleansing, all the way to counterterrorism and even humanitarian aid far, far from Europe's borders.
And here's a wild fact for you. That core promise, Article 5, it's only been used one time in its entire history. And it wasn't for a Soviet invasion of Europe, it was for the 9/11 terrorist attacks on the United States. In response, NATO allies flew patrols over American skies and went with the US into Afghanistan. The promise was kept. Simple as that.
And it wasn't just the mission that changed. The alliance itself got bigger, a lot bigger. It grew from the original 12 founding members to 32 countries today. And here's the crucial part. Many of these new members were former Warsaw Pact countries, nations that were literally on the other side of the Iron Curtain, now looking for that same security guarantee.
And that, right there, brings us to today. The world has changed dramatically, and NATO is facing this really complex mix of new threats and some very loud echoes of its old rivalry.
You see, the end of the Cold War didn't just magically end tensions with Russia. NATO's expansion eastward, which Moscow saw as a direct threat, created a lot of friction. Then came Russia's annexation of Crimea in 2014 and its full-scale invasion of Ukraine in 2022.
Suddenly, NATO's original job deterring Russian aggression was right back at the top of the list. And that, of course, is what pushed historically neutral countries like Finland and Sweden to join.
But the challenges aren't all coming from the outside. There's this long-running debate inside the alliance about burden sharing, basically who's paying their fair share. Members have all pledged to spend 2% of their economy on defense, but not everyone hits that target. This creates a lot of friction, especially since the United States carries so much of the military weight of the alliance.
So this is NATO's modern reality. It's an alliance that was forged in the Cold War, but now it's dealing with hybrid warfare, cyber attacks, the rise of China, and a brutal, conventional war raging right on its doorstep. It has proven to be incredibly adaptable over the years, but its challenges today are as serious as any it's ever faced, which leaves all of us with the ultimate question: can this 75-year-old promise hold up for the next generation?